following is a presentation of WLCN 96.3 FM and WLCNonline.com. 4 o'clock, time for the 4 p.m. 411 here on WLCN 96.3 FM. I am Lloyd Kirby, the marketing manager here at WLCN, and back with us for a second visit is Lincoln Police Chief Joe Meister. Chief Meister, I should say. Thank you for being with us. As I try and get used to these buttons here again. Oh, I want to push that one so people can see you. Absolutely, absolutely. So the main motivation for me giving you a call here was the recent decision as far as the Safety Act goes, because we've heard about that for months now, and of course it was challenged, the bail portion of it. That ruling came down. So in terms of the City of Lincoln Police Department, what are the implications of the Safety Act as far as how you go about your business?
Well, we're going to go about our business mostly the same way. What may be frustrating to some of the citizens of Lincoln is our response to more minor crimes, what what have been defined as like Class B and C misdemeanors. These are things like trespassing or disorderly conduct that are common offenses. This act has removed our ability to place those individuals under custodial arrest and remove them from where they're committing the offense at. So it'll be a citation in lieu of arrest unless that offense, the person continues to commit it. So if I were to issue a citation for trespassing in lieu of arrest and tell the person to leave the property they've trespassed on and they refuse to do so, then I can carry them away from that property, but I can't take them to a correctional facility or jail or a police station. So I have to take them someplace, maybe a place like that, but just release them there in the parking lot. So that'll give that person the ability to go right back to what they were doing. And I think that some folks will find that a little frustrating, but that's what we've been limited to for those more minor offenses.
And so I had thought when the act originally came out, and it's several hundred pages of information, I thought I remembered hearing something about what maybe you were just talking about there, that it was generally a no cash bail system. However, if like there was a repeated offense or if the situation escalated, then perhaps it might escalate into a cash bail situation. Am I interpreting that correctly?
Not quite, but close. There will still be no cash bail at all. It's been ruled not unconstitutional, but it's been ruled constitutional for the state to make the decision to abolish it. So in the event that a person commits what's called a detainable offense, and there's a list that we've been provided, at that point we can arrest a person for a Class A misdemeanor or above, and then hold them until they can have a hearing before a judge. The judge will either the state has to file a petition to detain them until their trial, in which case they won't get out of jail at all. There's no amount they can pay to get out. Or a judge will set conditions of pretrial release, which may be any number of things that the judge decides that is appropriate.
So how does that impact how you and the department go about your business? I'm sure I remember prior to the adoption of the act, and when your predecessor was here, Chief Velakovich, he was meeting with the state's attorney and I believe the county sheriff maybe at the same time, and just so you were all kind of on the same page in terms of where things stood and what what sort of boundaries you had in terms of where you could operate. Now that the cash bail has been removed, are you still having those kinds of meetings, or where do things stand in that regard?
Yes, we're still having those meetings. We look to have more of them prior to September 18th when this goes into full effect, just so that the court system and the law enforcement and circuit clerk is prepared to deal with the new way of doing things and going about the legal process. So it's challenging, but we're going to work through it. I think there may be a great impact on the sheriff's department in operating the jail. I think it's a misconception that everybody's just going to get out of jail and be released. In the instance where somebody creates a new offense once they've been put on pretrial conditions and creates a new or commits a new offense, particularly any felony offense, the judge could choose to detain that person until their trial, so that jail may fill up and fill up pretty quick.
And we've already kind of got issues in that regard. Absolutely. As far as our jail here in the county. So our guest is Chief Joe Meister from the Lincoln Police Department. 217-648-5510, the number to call if you have questions about the Safety Act or the Lincoln Police Department or law enforcement in general, I guess. Chief Meister has been on the job for, what did we decide, just about 8 months now?
Yep.
So other than the Safety Act, how are things going here in your first, I don't know, are you still on the honeymoon part of the job? Or
I don't think I got a honeymoon part of the job, just due to the challenges in law enforcement as a whole. It's been a challenge. And prior, when I was serving as a deputy chief, it was challenging then. Everybody has staffing issues. We've been plagued with injuries, and it's been a challenge, but we're getting through it, trying to make sure that we continue to provide the level of service that everybody expects.
What is then probably your top challenge or top few challenges? I mean, staffing you mentioned.
Definitely.
I know with the Safety Act there was a whole adoption of technology and body cameras and training and making sure there was server space to house the videos and things like that. What other sorts of challenges have you faced here in these 8 months?
You hit quite a few of them. Adaptation of new technology and learning how to use it, manage it. The biggest challenge has been the staffing issue. If you don't have enough guys to fill a patrol shift, it's very hard to do special activities as well. So that's been a big challenge for us.
And so what, if you were at full staff, how many officers would be on staff in the department?
Right now we have 28 sworn positions. We have 3 current vacancies, and then some other people, unfortunately, off on different kinds of leaves, injuries, and that. So hopefully we'll have some hiring done here by the end of August, and get our numbers back up to where they need to be.
And that just is not. It's not like a high school situation, for example, where if a teacher's out sick or for whatever reason, you just call a substitute in and someone fills in. I mean, you've got all the training and the expertise and the things you need to know. And I think you mentioned it last time you were here. If your numbers are down, then that just kind of has a ripple effect in terms of strain on the department, because hours need to be filled, so there's overtime, and then you've got crazy shifts and numbers of hours per week, so just sort of a domino effect on the entire staff. So as chief, is there anything you do to kind of keep morale up and keep the spirits up? I get out and
work with them. The deputy chief and I have been doing that for quite a long time now, more often now than in the previous months, but I think that's an important tool to show the guys that you're willing to get out there and do exactly what they have to do. So it's a strategy I'm using. I'm hoping that it works.
Okay. Once again, our guest is Chief Joe Meister from the Lincoln Police Department. 217-648-5510, the number to call if you have questions or comments. We'll go ahead and take our first break of the show, and we'll be back in 2 minutes with more with Chief Joe Meister. Live video streaming of this event is made possible in part by WLCN's live stream technology sponsor, Me Realty, located at 602 Keokuk Street in Lincoln, and online at merealty.com. And we are back on the 4 p.m. 411. Our guest for this half hour is Chief Joe Meister from the City of Lincoln Police Department. If you have questions or comment, we've been talking about the Safety Act so far, but if you have other questions you would like to call in with or comments, as I mentioned, 217-648-5510, the number to call, or you can email your questions, 4pm411 at WLCNonline.com. We spent the first segment talking mostly about the Safety Act and the ripple effect it's sort of had on your department and operations and things like that. Then we talked a little bit about staffing. I noticed on social media I saw an ad or a post about that applications were being sought for positions. So I think we talked about this. It might have been on the Viewpoint program. They kind of mix up with me every once in a while. But once someone applies, and if you have a candidate that you think is going to be a good fit for the department, it's not just like you walk in for an interview and check a couple references and then make a phone call and say, hey, you're hired. There's an entire process that goes into it. Can you kind of give us a peek behind the curtain at what happens there?
Sure, yeah. We begin with a thorough background investigation, which starts with an in-depth interview with the candidate himself or herself, and then reference interviews, previous employers, things of that nature. There's also a criminal background check done through the FBI so that it hits a national database, a very extensive psychological examination, and sometimes a polygraph if there are any questionable areas that we think need to be reviewed even further. And that's just to get your foot in the door. At that point. There's physical testing and drug screening, and then finally the academy. You have to show that you're physically fit enough to qualify for a police officer position, and if you do so, then you spend 16 weeks in the academy before you come back for another 12 weeks of field training at minimum. In
an ideal situation, if there aren't any bumps in the road from the moment someone applies, or once you start going through the applications, if you find a candidate that you're interested, that you think might be a good fit, like what is that timeline? I know there's 16 weeks of academy, but it's got to take several weeks to do all the background and the other testing as well.
Yeah, I would say on average about 8 months.
Okay.
From start to finish, where a new baby cop comes out with shiny boots and answers your call for help.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, I saw that post on social media last time you were here. You were talking about one of your I don't know if it's a goal, but something you would like to maybe promote a little bit more is interaction with the public and public awareness of goings on with the department on social media. Have you been able to do much of that as of late, or have you been dealing with other things?
I've been juggling with quite a few other things here recently. I do look forward to continue using social media to keep the public more aware of what's going on. We do issue a monthly report on the city website that shares all of our statistics, our crime, arrests, citation, traffic crashes, all that stuff. But I find that not as many people get on there to read that as on Facebook or Twitter or something like that. So I think it is a useful tool, and I look forward to using it more often.
Okay. And again, I don't know how much you are on social media, but I know several of the different interest groups or news groups or what's happening locally. Every once in a while I'll see a post about, boy, some idiot was driving 55 in this 30-mile-an-hour zone, or person driving around with their radio blaring and I could hear it a couple blocks away. Where's the police when you need them? Other than just venting on Facebook, what could individuals in those situations do if they do happen to see someone speeding through a neighborhood or whatever the case might be? What is the most effective way to make you aware of it so that some action might take place?
To elicit a police response, they need to call Logan Dispatch. If it's a situation that rises to an emergency level, obviously 911, but there's a non-emergency number as well. Or they can call the police department directly with our line 732-2151. But dispatch is the fastest way to get a hold of a police officer. Social media posts, although they may make somebody feel a little better about their frustrations, don't do us any good. Our officers who are out on patrol aren't on Facebook looking for a call to go on. They're out in their cars, and like I told you, with the staffing issues that we have, oftentimes they're busy. Those calls stack up sometimes. Sure. If we only have 3 or 4 guys on duty, they need to get to the highest priority event first and remedy that situation and then move on. And that can be frustrating to the public when they don't see a police officer running traffic control or doing traffic enforcement. Where are they at? What are they doing?
Right.
We've got about 1,000 incidents a month. And again, that's on our monthly report.
Oh, wow.
So they're out there working hard. You got to call them to find one.
So what is the process then? Like, let's just use someone speeding through the neighborhood as an example. If it's not a local resident, if it's just someone driving through well beyond the speed limit, maybe a citizen sees them but don't get a license plate. They might see the color of the car or may be able to give you some information. They call dispatch. But again, if it's someone speeding through a neighborhood, chances are it might be like a one and done thing. They're zipping through and then they're on to different territories. Is there any process or anything that you can do as officers, or anything that the public can do to maybe help out in that situation?
So if it's a frequent issue, say you have a constant violator in your neighborhood, you can request extra patrols. You can contact the police department through email and say, hey, every Monday morning this guy blows through my neighborhood at 9 o'clock. And that is a way for us to prepare to deal with that situation in the future.
Right.
Because like you mentioned, you may call, and by the time I drive halfway across town, that person's out of Lincoln altogether.
Right.
So we don't always catch them.
Sure.
I'll be as honest as I can about that. Sometimes we're not provided enough information to follow up to identify them, like just a color of a vehicle, maybe no license plate, things like that. And unfortunately, there's not much we can do about those situations. But for people who are wanting to file a complaint or initiate a call for service, collecting as much information as they're calling dispatch is what's important. A license plate number, a description of the vehicle if there's one involved or a suspect, as much detail as possible. That's what helps us in the long run.
And lately, of course, folks have got like Ring doorbells and security cameras. Do you folks use any of that kind of footage to kind of help figure out suspects and gain information that way?
They're phenomenal. They really are. For the folks who have them, I would suggest investing in the data storage, because some folks just buy them so that they know when somebody's at their front door. But that doesn't record the footage. We've oftentimes used recorded footage from Ring style doorbells and cameras and we've captured a lot of people based off that evidence. A lot of burglaries and thefts have been solved just due to that stuff.
Very
Our
nice.
officers who are out there will recognize people from time to time, or maybe we have an idea who the suspect in this area is, and then we can collect that information and file a case.
Okay, very good. We've reached our second breaking point here. So once again, we'll be back with Chief Joe Meister from the City of Lincoln Police Department. We welcome your calls or comments, 217-648-5510, or you can email your comments 4pm411 at WLCNonline.com. We will be back in 2 minutes with more with Chief Joe Meister. And we are back on the 4 p.m. 411. I'm Lloyd Kirby, Marketing Manager here at WLCN. And we are talking with Lincoln Police Chief Joe Meister. Once again, if you have questions or comments, 217-648-5510, the number to call. We were talking before the break about, several things, but one of the topics was social media and use of social media, and how you as a chief had mentioned before you wanted to utilize social media more to keep the public informed. I would imagine, though you may desire to do that, you mentioned how your hands have been tied with other duties right now, but as much as you would want to do that, there are probably some limitations on how much information you can release, or the time, how timely that information can be, and things like that. Is there, what kind of constraints are there, I guess, is what I wanted to ask you on as far as what you can share with the public?
Sure. Typically, as with any press release, because I would consider a social media release a press release, or a public announcement at least, we don't want to do anything or release any information that could damage a criminal prosecution, taint a jury pool, anything like that. So sometimes I'll seek the advice of the prosecutor's office before I release anything. If it's a matter of public safety, an emergency situation, I'll forego that so that the public has the information that they need. Luckily, recently, we haven't had too many of those types of issues, knock on wood, but that's what I would use an immediate release for. Or if it's a situation that I know people are going to place a lot of requests for information, I'll release enough information that I still feel comfortable that it won't damage the investigation, or for a lack of better terms, cause anybody personal grief. I wouldn't want to release information that a victim may feel uncomfortable with having released. So those are the kind of things that are constraints on the information flow.
Yeah, and I think maybe the public doesn't always think of that side of the issue. They want to know, I heard this sound over here, I saw a bunch of police cars over here.
Right.
As you mentioned, if it's an active investigation, or there are potential jury members that will be selected, you have to use a lot of discretion in what you can and can't release there.
Right.
So I mentioned, or we talked earlier about this is like 8-ish months on the job for you. Talked about some of the challenges you've met. What has been like the most pleasant surprise that you've had on the positive side of things?
Public thanks. It's always the most rewarding thing in this job, and a couple of times I know that our department members have been thanked by the public, and that's a huge reward to a police officer. We don't get that much nowadays, and builds morale for everybody in the department, and reminds you what you're out there for, to do good things. And that's been the most pleasantly surprising, we hope. So I won't ask you the unpleasant surprises, because you probably have quite a list for that. We were talking off air that I noticed on one of the local news sites that there's an upcoming police and fire commission, and I was kind of ignorant about that even we had a police and fire commission. I saw that there's an upcoming meeting, though. Can you kind of, for those who may not be aware, such as myself, can you kind of tell us what that commission, what it does, and what will happen at the meeting? Are they public meetings? If someone has something they want to share about the police or first responders in general, is that an appropriate place for that person to go? Sure. There is a public participation section in every police and fire commission meeting. That commission serves as a kind of a governing body over the police and fire departments in relation to hiring and promotion, and then sometimes hearings about discipline, depending on contractual things with our bargaining agreements. But that's I guess the most important and involved thing that the Police and Fire Commission does is they oversee the hiring and promotionary process for our emergency services.
And then is it like a, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a subcommittee of like the city council, or is a branch of that, or how do those two?
The members
entities?
are appointed by the mayor,
Mm-hmm.
and I believe that they're approved by the council. So, so the council doesn't have to get involved like a merit commission or something.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have to get involved in the interviews and the promotional testing stuff that is required during that period of your employment.
Okay. Just got a couple minutes left here, and I know you brought some notes, but you said those were more for just memory purposes than anything if we got into something technical. Your police chief for the foreseeable future, are there certain goals or certain areas in which you would like the department to improve, or something maybe in public perceptions? What kinds of things do you do in terms of long-term planning as police chief?
Well, there's always areas to improve upon. I mentioned staffing a lot because really without the appropriate number of guys, we can't accomplish all the goals that we set for ourselves. One of the big things is to get back into the Central Illinois Enforcement Group full-time. To staff our detectives bureau appropriately again, because we've been pulling these guys to help with patrols, and that takes away from some very important investigations at times, or at least complicates them. So that's my immediate goal, is to improve the staffing situation. In the future, I may approach the council with needs of additional police officers if we can see to it to show that those are needed. That'd be a long-term goal. So just off the top of my head, those are the things that I can think of.
I'm going to throw you a curveball because it just popped into my head, but it's something I've been curious about for a few years now. Used to be, growing up, I would see patrol cars and the traditional four-door sedan type of vehicles, but more and more as of late, I've seen, I believe the police department as well as the sheriff's department with pickups and different vehicles. What is the rationale behind those? What purpose do they serve beyond what a traditional patrol car would give you?
They can carry more gear and equipment, but foremost reason is their durability. Some folks in Lincoln have noticed that some of our streets are a little rough in different places, and sedans don't handle that very well, especially with the way we have to drive sometimes to get to an emergency. Sure. It's hard on them, and they're not built quite as tough as a SUV or a truck. That, and we have all-wheel drive capability then for response in the wintertime or during a weather event.
Okay. I just kind of wondered about that because I was thinking, geez, if you go to a stop and you do have to detain someone and you're in a pickup, do you cuff them and throw them in the bed? Or
they're four doors. They're
all
really?
4 doors, yeah. Okay. I guess I haven't looked that closely.
They got a full rear passenger compartment.
All right. Yeah. Very good. Well, see, you know everything. So
I don't know about that.
Well, at least in terms of vehicles, we'll check that box for you. So our guest has been Chief Joe Meister from the Lincoln Police Force, Dr. Chief Meister. Thank you very much. Not a doctor.
No. Didn't play one on TV.
Didn't play one on TV either. All right. Well, but you did do an admirable role as police chief here for the 4 p.m. 411 and always. So thank you for finding time to come visit us. We will be back next week with the 4 p.m. 411. Be sure to tune in to Viewpoint tomorrow. We will have John Fulton, who is the president of the Logan County Fair Board, and he'll be talking about the upcoming Logan County Fair. But for Chief Joe Meister, I am Lloyd Kirby. Thank you for tuning in to the 4 p.m. 411. Live video streaming of this event is made possible in part by WLCN's live stream technology sponsor, Me Realty, located at 602 Keokuk Street in Lincoln, and online at merealty.com. The preceding program is a presentation of WLCN 96.3 FM and WLCNonline.com.